I can understand a lot and get into the position of many people. I'm a pretty open person and have always agreed to some adventures. But what I really can't understand is how my friend and my loving wife could betray me. It was very mean of them, so they faced really cruel karma. Are you confident your new Sequoia can handle rough roads? It's quite large. I took another sip of my Stan's Wicked Ale and added, "Sure, you need the leg room being so skinny. But I'm not sure, Ted. I wouldn't risk taking something like that up the turkey track. My old Land Bruiser barely managed it, and it's half the weight." Toxic late-afternoon sunlight filtered through the smogberry trees, a typical early summer day in the Los Angeles basin at the turn of the century. I reclined in my chaise lounge next to Ted's. We watched our wives in bikinis floating in Ted and Alice's backyard pool. For once, they weren't trading barbs. Smog-cloaked mountains loomed over our Pasadena neighborhood. "They promised me it can go anywhere, and that's where I'm going to take it," Ted said confidently, taking a swig of his tooth sheaf malt and letting out a belch. "I'm ready for the turkey track. I'm not worried about those cautionary tales. More power." The roughest road in Anza Borrego Desert State Park, linking San Diego to the Salton Sea, resembles the shape of a bird's footprint, hence its name, Turkey Track. The most challenging of these steep paths is marked by large pits and steep cliffs. Often, while crawling slowly uphill, the vehicle balances precariously on just 3 wheels. My cautious wife refuses to cross these gaps and waits anxiously while I navigate them. Fortunately, we haven't met disaster yet. Look, Anza Borrego isn't ideal for a novice outing. I'm certain you wouldn't manage Fat Man's misery. Even a well-prepared Suzuki Samurai struggles through that narrow rock passage. I took another sip of Wicked Ale, hoping he'd consider my point. Ted cracked open a fresh tooth sheaf and took a sip. "Okay, wise guy, where do you suggest we go for Memorial Day weekend? And don't say Angela's Crest. It's too easy, full of Jeep and samurai newbies." Ted's wife, Alice, my esteemed co-worker and a skilled circuitry engineer, sauntered over lazily. "If you've got problems, Teddy darling, it's your own doing." She flashed me a friendly smile, her lips hinting at something more. 2 couples lounged by the pool. Us, Bob and Carol, and them, Ted and Alice. My naturally tan wife, Carol, drifted over to us. "Hey, cut him some slack, Alice. He's a guy, you know? Thinks cars are macho. Even the quirky ones like what you guys work on." She glanced teasingly at Ted, then turned to me. "So, Bobby, where do you suggest for a test track? Something not too boring for the holiday, right?" I had considered how to appease Ted. "I know just the spot. East of Palm Springs, there are some fantastic mining trails that wind up into the Chuckwalla Mountains. They're rugged enough for a good challenge, but not likely to get us killed." I took another sip of beer. Much of the area is designated BLM wilderness, but there are existing roads and dry washes we can use. "The Chuckwallas? That sounds great," Alice remarked. "Yeah, it's really stunning out there," Carol agreed. "What? An agreement between these two? A miracle. We're friends and neighbors here in Pasadena. Alice and I are colleagues. We all drive together in our 4 Air 4s in a group. Our children play and attend school together. Today, they're all hanging out together at Carol's parents' place in Burbank, out in the valley, on this hot Sunday. We're raising a new generation of valley girls, Val gals, totally into that scene. Are we all best friends? Not quite. More like close acquaintances with shared interests, such as their pool. We generally get along well. It's a good thing, since making new friends is hard work. If only Carol weren't so bossy and Ted weren't so unreliable. Meanwhile, us adults had this afternoon and evening to ourselves. Privacy isn't easy in this suburban area with its low fences thanks to the homeowners association. No skinny dipping until after dark, and even then, We have to watch out for nosy neighbors. Such prudes. So we spent our time wisely, lounging, joking, flirting, getting a little tipsy, chatting nonsense, and discussing plans and dreams. Ted and I argued over our upcoming trip plans. As for the ladies, I'm not sure what they had planned, besides tagging along, looking great, and teasing each other whenever they could. Just the usual. We're planning a Memorial Day getaway together for over 4 days. Will it be fun? Ted traded his 444 4Runner for that new Sequoia last week, and he's eager to test it out. As if he even knows what that means. I mean, Ted was an all-right real estate broker, albeit lazy. But when it came to backroad scrambling, he fancied himself more capable than he actually was. The truth was, Angela's crest would have suited him best. However, his ego wouldn't entertain that idea. At least he remembered his first aid training from his army days, so he wasn't completely useless on our outings. Our interactions by the pool, fueled by alcohol, often led to squabbles. There were debates over who brought what and in what quantities, who was responsible for which provisions, and perpetual clashes of personalities. I'm detail-oriented. Ted is laid back to the point of negligence, Carol asserts dominance, and Alice doesn't tolerate any nonsense. I don't take orders from you, Carol. Leave that for your subordinates, Alice exclaimed irritably. Carol naturally assumed control whenever possible, a trait ingrained from running her own media marketing agency. Her lineage played a role as well. Carolina Carrillo Ortega hailed from a prominent old Spanish family entrenched in California since pre-Mexican times. Her ancestors had been among Father Sarah's associates during the founding of the California missions in the late 1700s. Such noble families nurtured a sense of entitlement. Adding to her lack of humility, Carol's parents were Hollywood studio executives, and she herself was raised as a privileged valley girl. She utilized her close-knit Val-Gal circle mercilessly in her professional endeavors, displaying a keen grasp of networking. I adore her dearly, but she drives me up the wall at times. Truth be told, she has that effect on everyone, admirers and critics alike. People swoon over her stunning physique until she starts giving orders. Crossing her is not advisable. The story of my own family is also remarkable. My name is Roberto Pico Ortega, and my ancestors once owned a significant part of the territory that is now called Greater Los Angeles, before these Spanish and Mexican possessions were seized by the Americans. But this is history. I won't be the one bragging about my famous background. Okay, it's officially night now. It's time to take off the costumes, exclaimed Carol, who always tried to show off her toned, tanned body at every opportunity. Alice gave her a disapproving look, but quickly dropped her short swimsuit onto the deck. I couldn't help but glance at the freckled, curvy Alice. Ted and I soon followed suit. We made ourselves comfortable. Alice settled down next to her husband, and Carol settled down next to me. Carol met my gaze. So, Bobby, are we going to go swimming again, or are you just going to swim with me a little more? What, again? I teased, pulling her closer to me. All of her. We kissed. Yes, again. But first you need to get wet. Carol's commanding voice left no room for objections. She grabbed my arm and dragged me into the pool, splashing awkwardly into the water. Ted was laughing, until Alice used her jiu-jitsu skills to submerge him underwater. All she needed was the right lever. The darkness of the night served as a cover for what we were doing in the pool. After drying off on our deck chairs, Carol settled into my lap and we began to have intimacy. With a sigh of satisfaction, I noticed that Alice was doing the same with Ted. Carol exclaimed, "My head is spinning." It was exciting. In this impromptu race, Carol finished first and Alice finished second. Ted and I carefully covered our partners' mouths to muffle their screams, remembering the neighbors. It was a great experience. We all trusted each other, and everyone was doing business with their partner. After that, we took a break. Carol snuggled up to me. We kissed, enjoying the moment we spent together. The alarm rang. It was time to get dressed and go pick up the kids. Damn. The new work week commenced. Alice and I endured our brief yet tiresome commute to Lunadyne, a small aerospace company near Caltech and NASA JPL. My BMW crept along the I-210 freeway at a respectable 10 miles per hour, occasionally hitting 15 in the faster sections. Damn, I really dislike Monday mornings. At Lunadyne, I specialize in designing jet and rocket exhaust systems, a role dubbed hot guy. Alice, on the other hand, is our esteemed gizmo gal, skillfully crafting electronic control system prototypes. She's not only a brilliant technician, but also a delightful redhead, with a penchant for camping. However, her fiery temperament and limited social finesse sometimes fall short. She lacks the smoothness required for management. We abide by a techie maxim: those who can, engineer. Those who can't engineer, manage. And those who can't manage engineers. I've heard this holds true in other technical fields as well. Alice and I live next door to each other. We work together, have lunch together, commute together, skinny dip together, and hang out with our partners. There's no affair between us, and we don't discuss poolside escapades. We both experienced it, so why bother? During our commutes, we talk about work, what our teams are up to, and all the usual topics: politics, religion, society, economics, and culture. We also chat about our past and upcoming four-wheel trips. Safe, mundane subjects. "Are you prepared for the start of summer?" Alice asked, sipping her mocha and eyeing the traffic jam. "And do you really think Ted is ready for a challenging drive? In Anza Borracho? No way." We humorously dubbed Anza Borrego Park as Anza Borracho, with borracho meaning drunk in Spanish. "But out in the Chuck Wallace?" "Yeah. The routes I'm considering are rugged, but much better suited. The Sequoia should handle them fine." Ted's been talking nonstop for months about upgrading from our old 4Runner to this new toy. Now that he's got that big Sequoia, bought it with my money, he's itching to test it out. Test himself out, really. It's like off-road driving is crucial for his masculinity, like it validates him. But truth is, he's not really the outdoorsy type. She took another sip of mocha. Alice and I both had scouting experience in our youth, cultivating survival skills and resourcefulness. We were engineers, damn it. We were builders. Carol and Ted, on the other hand, were lifelong urbanites from privileged backgrounds. It seemed their motto was, "Let someone else do it." That's why they managed their own offices and delegated the grunt work. "I'm not really a cowboy, just bought the hat," I sang out. "Ted drives rough roads to prove he's tough. Needs a rough truck to match. So, that's what he gets. But it's never enough." I shifted to a different tune, singing, "But he ain't got cowboy lips." Alice chuckled. "Well, you've got those caballero lips close enough. But where have they gotten you, what?" She teased, giving me a playful pout. "Where they've gotten me is a life with my Carolina, the girl of my dreams," I replied with a grin. "Not too shabby, right?" Alice sighed dramatically. "Oh, spare me. I know she's got a killer body, but how do you tolerate that bossy woman? Thinks she's the commander-in-chief of Greater Pasadena, always telling me..." "Relax. Take a deep breath. Hold it. Exhale. Hold. Inhale. Hold. Yeah, just like that." "Oh, screw you," she deadpanned. "I only have to tolerate her occasionally. You have to deal with her all the time." I'm not complaining. I nudged the AC up a notch. The day was warming up. "Hey, do I nag you about your useless husband?" Ted's name was on the door of his realty agency, but he seemed to do little visible work there. Officially the broker, his staff kept the office running while he golfed or played squash with clients, real or potential, or otherwise performed his important management duties. Right. "Yeah, well," Alice conceded, "Ted does lead a rather relaxed life, but he's great with the kids, always has time for them and errands. Maybe he's a bit insecure since I'm the main breadwinner. You men and your fragile egos." "Fair enough," I said. "Truce. How's that XJ9E project coming along?" We shifted back to the safer ground of work-related chatter. During the week leading up to Memorial Day in 2001, it seemed that none of us were really focused on our regular work. We were busy preparing for our upcoming trip. Alice and I made lists of equipment and sent our partners to buy what we needed, probably delegating the actual purchases to others. After all, that's what helpers are for. Our children, as usual, tried to ignore us, but we forced them to help too. I'll go through the list again, Dolly. Let's start with... Why should I do this? My youngest daughter, Dolores, complained. I still have homework to do. That's right, and you'll take care of him as soon as we're done. Sometimes I wonder if my daughters have any communication skills at all. They haven't quite figured out how to manipulate us yet. What's wrong with kids these days? But I always have to do everything myself, my melodramatic daughter snorted. Why can't Rosie do that? Because Rosalita is busy helping your mom with her checklist. We share the burden honestly, you know. Stop complaining and start with camping gear. The tent. I don't care about your stupid... The tent, I insisted. Check the tent. The sooner we're done here, the sooner you can do your homework, watch TV, play games, and call your friends. Yes, you can complain to them about how badly we treat you. But first, about the main thing, the tent. Okay. Yes, it's from Sierra Designs, which smells like moldy nylon. I mean, dirt. Watch your mouth. Well, what about poles, stakes, raincoats, and bedding? Yes, they're all here, all these things. Okay, here are a dozen metal pillars, and none of them are bent, and so it continued step by step. We meticulously reviewed the camp gear, tools, spare parts, and essentials for the Land Cruiser. Meanwhile, Carol and Rosie were likely going through their own checklist: cooking gear, medical kit, clothing, and provisions. Personally, I rechecked the maps and electronics. Alice was just as thorough as I was, and no doubt her daughters Susanna and Carrie were following a similar routine, though without much help from their father, Ted. Ted would feign interest in inspecting his new 4x4, but avoided getting hands-on or worrying about details, leaving the tasks to others. Certain decisions were straightforward. The children would stay with Carol's parents again, bringing their pets along. No dogs, cats, ferrets, or iguanas on this trip. Each couple packed camping equipment, sleeping gear, a folding table and chairs, ample food and water, extra fuel, various tools, and handheld VHF radios as backup for their cell phones. Due to unreliable cell service in steep, narrow arroyos, radio communication was preferred as it incurred no charges. As we completed the checklist, non-perishable items were inventoried and loaded. It was all about careful planning, akin to an engineer's approach. This was how we ensured our adventure would be safe and successful. Attention to detail was key. Reality. What exactly is reality? Reality is a crutch. According to the old hippie view, who needs reality when you have a rich fantasy life? Reality is a clutch. Seen on the dashboard of a friend's old panel truck with transmission issues. Reality is what remains after you stop believing in it. This seems obvious. Does gravity cease to exist if you stop believing in it? Reality is whatever bites your ass. If it affects you, it's real. Otherwise, why bother? I typically apply the bites your ass definition when planning off-road trips, just as I do when designing turbines and exhaust systems. Injury and death certainly fall under that category. The checking and packing process proceeded leisurely over a couple of days and evenings. We were loaded, fueled, and prepared by Thursday night. On Friday, we all arranged to leave work early to kick off the weekend. We casually strolled into the office, shuffled some papers, grabbed a quick lunch, and then departed. Carol and Ted had it especially easy since they just had to give orders. Alice and I were valued employees at Lunadyne, so we encountered no issues either. We breezed into summer. Our small group hit the road shortly after noon, enduring the typical mundane squabbles. Ted and Carol, true to form, could easily have PETA, pain in the ass, tattooed on their foreheads. They're definitely from Pain in the Ass R Us. Around noon was early enough. We avoided the worst of the commuter traffic. It was a relaxed drive to the outskirts beyond San Bernardino and Redlands. There were a few infuriating drivers deserving of a good shouting, and a couple of truckers who seemed intent on our demise. Carol typed away on her small Sony Vaio laptop while we talked about life, the kids' schoolwork, our friends, and other casual topics. Just some conversation and a bit of typing. It's the Little Mac account, that's what we call it. We're working with the California Macadamia Board on a marketing plan to make macadamias the most popular nuts. Peanuts are declining. Almonds and pistachios are rising. Those are our competition. You must be crazy to take on this job, I teased. She gave me a half-hearted grin. Okay, so you've heard that one before? Macadamias? Really? Do they even grow in California? They do, but not in large quantities. Most come from Australia, then Hawaii, Central America, and other places. The board believes boosting demand for macadamias from anywhere will benefit local growers. That's our mission. I'm just testing some ideas. She tapped on the keyboard again. Well, they taste great, sure, but so do lots of things that don't sell much. I maneuvered around a slow pickup truck. There's more than just cocktail nuts and snacks. They make macadamia flour. You have to try honey macadamia pancakes. Macadamia milk, macadamia butter, macadamia cheese, though that one isn't so great. Macadamia candies, yeah, all sorts of stuff. But there's little public awareness about all that. Yes, that's our job. Capture attention and change minds. So you're planning an advertising strategy? That's not your usual focus. No, it's not traditional advertising. The marketing board wanted some catchy slogans like Mac Snack Attack or I'm Nuts for Max, really superficial stuff, to be plastered on TV and billboards. That's so outdated. Instead, we're going for a viral campaign on the internet. We'll set up friendly, informal blogs, subtly engage in news groups, forums, and chat rooms. But absolutely no junk mail, no spam. That's not our style. We want it to appear grassroots, spontaneous, organic, with recipe clubs and brainstorming sessions, all very understated. And this will be exclusively an internet campaign? Has anyone attempted that before? A few have tried. We study what others have done. The beauty of it is, it's incredibly cost-effective. No expensive media purchases, no broad, indiscriminate targeting. It's about creating an ambiance. We'll cultivate an environment where macadamias are a must-have, a staple on every shopping list. So how do you create that ambiance? I glanced at the thick smog around us and imagined the essence of nuts in the air. There are countless approaches. We can try them all, virtually for free. Each tactic gets its chance. We tweak words and images, measure reactions, keep what resonates, discard what doesn't. Our software generates personalized posts that feel genuine. An AI program monitors responses and tailors replies or asks for human input when needed. That's really our only expense, and we outsource it. Oh, wait. She typed a few more keys. We were interrupted by the towering mountains surrounding us. Carol grabbed the crackling VHF radio from its mount on the dashboard. Say that again, Alice, I didn't catch it. I said we could use a break. Let's stop at the dinosaurs in Cabazon. Got it. We'll take the Cabazon exit. See you by the Bronto. Actually, it was a hollow, 150-foot-long concrete apatosaurus. There's no such thing as a brontosaurus, but that's what they called it when they built it. I parked our sand-colored Land Cruiser by the toilet. Ted parked his red Sequoia behind us. The women hurried to the toilet. Ted and I stretched out and looked at the dinosaurs. Big Dinny, think alley-oop, and a huge Tyrannosaurus Rex. Cabazon is hardly a village located in a deep valley between the high mountains of San Bernardino in the north and San Jacinto in the south. These dinosaurs were a landmark along the highway for a long time, until the Cahuilla Morongo tribe of Indians built a large casino resort nearby. I'll never forget the first time Alice and I stopped here, Ted recalled, taking a sip from a soda can and waving at Dinny. That was before we got married. I took her with me to a real estate conference in Palm Springs. We came from Los Angeles, and she needed to go to the bathroom, just like today. After she finished, we went up the stairs to the gift shop in Denny's Belly. There was no one else around. Ted pointed at the huge dinosaur again. Alice felt pretty frisky. We were fooling around while I was driving, so when we were alone, we made love right there. He chuckled. And now it's turned into a creationist museum. Got us all. Even when Ted is right and funny, he can be unbearable. Alice exited the restroom with a slight air of annoyance, though not quite anger. Carol followed shortly after, moving at a slower pace. I deduced their exchange inside hadn't been too harsh. Why did I assume they argued? Because they often did. Two dominant personalities, with no inclination to yield. Tough situation. We regrouped by our vehicles. I took the lead again. Carol began to speak, but I interrupted with a raised hand. I don't want to hear it, just ease up on Alice. Carol tried to interject, but I gestured again. No. Just no. She reluctantly returned to her Vio. The sun hung high as we crossed Whitewater Pass, the deep gorge in the coastal mountains, and descended into the sweltering Palm Springs area above the Salton Sea, located below sea level. Our route took us through Desert Hot Springs, Palm Desert, and Indio for fuel and date shakes. Then, climbing back above sea level over Chiriaco Summit into Chuckwalla Valley, we headed south toward the Mine Road turnoff before Desert Center, finally arriving at our destination. We parked beyond the cattle guard on the gravel track. After everyone stretched their legs and took in some summer dust to evaluate our situation, I signaled for Ted to join me at the map laid out on my Land Cruiser's hood. He swaggered over. "Where's the trail, partner?" Ted shaded his eyes dramatically, though the sun was behind us. "Out there. Southeast." I gestured, smirking. Ted seemed oblivious to the fact that tonto means idiot in Spanish. I pointed at the map. "We'll take the Red Cloud Mine Trail into the Chuckwallas. The path past the mine is rough, but manageable, and I know a good spot to camp. We still have a few hours of daylight left, but the sooner we settle in tonight, the earlier we can start tomorrow morning." "Settle in. I like that. I brought the hashish." "Yeah, we'll settle in." Alice responded to her husband's comment with a slight eye roll. We engineers indulged a bit for relaxation, but our executive friends enjoyed it more for the thrill. I thought to myself that Ted had better be sober tomorrow when we are going to overcome difficult trails. We got ready and drove into the desert mountains. I led the way past various desert flora, ocotillos, cholla cacti, prickly pear, creosote bushes, and yuccas. Ascending the steep track through narrow ravines until we reached a wide flat area where Carol and I had camped previously. I parked in a familiar spot near a fire pit. Ted pulled in behind me. I chose this place according to the realtor's rule. Location, location, and location again. It was open, but at the same time secluded. No one could sneak up on us. Privacy was important, but more importantly, the cell tower on top of Chiriaco was visible from here. We called home to let them know that we had arrived safely. "It's all right," Carol shouted, jumping out of the Land Cruiser. "We are back in nature, so let's act natural. I need to get some fresh air." She pulled on a pair of loose cargo shorts. "Damn it, this is so great." She looked amazing, too. I took off my t-shirt and shorts, leaving only my boots. Ted quickly followed my example, staring at Carol. Alice winced slightly, but followed our example, too. Her pale, freckled skin did not tolerate direct sunlight, but the evening light was soft. I couldn't help but admire our attractive companions. We set up camp, pitching tents, laying out tables and chairs, and building a minimalist kitchen. Our camp was ready. Carol turned on some rousing salsa music on her boombox and started dancing. I joined her, dancing with her. Ted put a refrigerator under the table with bottles of wine and beer. Alice was handing out drinks and dancing around Ted, her long straight hair streaming like cherry cider. When the sun set behind the high western mountains, we nudists frolicked and rejoiced. Due to the dry wind and cool shade, we put on light long-sleeved shirts. Ted and Alice cooked a hot dinner, and Carol and I built a log fire. We tried not to set fire to the local vegetation. Our evening consisted of dinner, wine, jokes, songs, contemplation of the flame, and in the end, we crept into the tents to engage in intimacy, accompanied by even louder snoring. It was a good night. Saturday. The cool morning breeze made it impossible to jump without outerwear. We all came out of the tents in tracksuits and with bleary smiles. Alice lit a Coleman propane stove to boil water for a Mexi mocha, instant coffee with cocoa and tequila. Ted made us hearty burritos, breakfast of champions. We warmed up by the morning campfire. After Ted and Carol talked about business for a while, we chatted about the day ahead. Carol's folding chair was next to mine. She reached out and playfully squeezed my leg. "It was great riding last night. And this morning, Bobby. Where are we riding today?" Another squeeze. I laughed. "You're almost always riding, kid. I'm just your little pony. And today we'll gallop off towards the sunset or something like that." Alice put her hand on Ted's thigh. "Hi, Silver," she whispered. "Don't be a lonely wanderer." Ted grinned and squeezed his wife's leg. "Oh, I just love going down into this dark canyon," he croaked, "even despite the ambushes." "Well, kids, as soon as you safely get out of the mine of love, we'll try another way of fighting, okay?" I waved the geodesic compass in the air. There is practically no cellular connection and GPS where we are going. As soon as we leave the camp, the phones will turn off. Any stone wall over 45 degrees high will block satellites and GPS. So let's not turn off our VHF radios. We can exchange obscene messages as long as we're not too far apart. Alice, you can say obscenities about the XJ9E project that you care so much about. Carol patted my hand. Try it, and you'll learn more about macadamia than you'd like to know. I think they squeeze the oil out of them for intimate lotions. Jeers, barbs, and giggles were heard as we broke camp. Our gear was disassembled, repackaged, and strapped tight to survive the bumpy road. The garbage was burned. The embers in the fire pit were carefully extinguished. The only traces we left were the cooled ashes and disturbed dust. We are responsible vacationers. It was a fun day. We rode along well-trodden country roads and along uneven rocky paths to old mines and tunnels. We had to chain the ATVs together to overcome several steep, muddy places and washed-out ditches. We got dirty. We didn't bother with clothing during the heat of the day, just sturdy footwear and towels strapped to the car seats to absorb sweat and juices. We stomped around, soaking up the full sun at every stop. Yay-hoo! And somehow we avoided falling into cactus patches. By the time we settled into a remote campsite that evening, we were all sweaty, grimy, and worn out. The camp shower we rigged up felt amazing, as well as dessert with sunrise tequila at night and stormy intimacy after dinner. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Our new camp was just within sight of a cell tower. We called home for a status update. Carol's folks had handled minor kitty crises with their usual calm efficiency. Nobody missed us much. Carol and Ted plugged their mini laptops into cell USB adapters and connected to their office servers to pass emails and notes. Everything was copacetic. Well, everything was copacetic except for the weather forecast. We received a warning about a storm moving up from the southeast. The monsoon was a month early. Wet weather typically arrives from the Gulf of Mexico in early July. According to Tucson tradition, the 4th of July is dry while the 5th is wet. But not this year. I suppose those climate change experts were right after all. The rain wasn't expected to reach us until late on Memorial Day, Monday, after we had already left, so no worries, right? Troubles could wait until tomorrow. Oh boy. In the distance, coyotes howled. Strange lights flashed overhead, accompanied by distant roars and thumps. This wasn't unexpected. We were camped just north of the Chocolate Mountains gunnery range, where the military practiced bombing and shelling extensively. Strobe lights flickered. Coyotes howled again. Summer bugs flew and crawled around. Navy and Marine aviators zoomed by. I don't know about you, but I find such flashbangs thrilling. Carol does too. More flashing and roaring overhead, along with howling and banging in the distance. Translated into more banging and howling on the ground. Sunday morning dawn came earlier than the day before. Our camp, situated on the eastern slope of the Chuckwallis, was bathed in the glare of the sun rising over the vast, flat expanse of the Sonoran Desert, stretching for more than 100 kilometers to the unseen Colorado River on Arizona's west coast. The soft calls of desert thrushes, poorwills, and mourning doves surrounded us. We dressed lightly in shorts and tees for another breakfast of champions. After dismantling the camp, we drove uphill, over a saddle notch, and back to the west slope, into a maze of deep rocky cuts beneath eerie Joshua trees and sturdy ironwoods, just below the pinyon juniper zone. As we descended a steep sandy wash, I misjudged a turn. We slid and bounced hard against a tough granitic chunk of quartz monzonite. I pressed the gas pedal. The engine responded, but the vehicle did not. Uh-oh. Ted and Alice's Sequoia was leading. I honked to get their attention. Ted carefully backed up. We all got out and assessed the situation. "Smooth move, smartass," Ted grunted. I had to agree. "Let me take a look." I slid underneath. The oil pan looked fine, as did everything else except the U-joint. It had snapped. Damn. I crawled out and gave them the bad news. "You brought tools and spare parts, right?" Carol demanded imperiously. "Tools, yes. Many spares, yes. Spare U-joint, no. I could maybe kludge it together if we had welding gear, but we don't." I felt glum. "How about brazing?" Alice asked. "You packed the brazing kit, right, Ted?" "Yeah, it's in there," Ted said. "But will a torch-brazed U-joint hold?" I thought about it. No, not under really rough conditions. It'd likely survive a fairly smooth drive as long as it's not too stressed. No sudden starts or stops, just steady pressure. But you might have to tow us back to I-10, or at least to the last downslope. Once we get there, it's just a few miles to Desert Center. I can get a U-joint replacement there. "Get the brazing kit out, Ted. We don't want to be stuck here all day," Carol ordered. "Yes, Your Highness, at once, Your Majesty," Ted mumbled, grumbling as he searched through the back of the Sequoia. I grumbled too as I retrieved the hydraulic jacks and toolbox from their storage compartments. We jacked up the disabled Land Cruiser. I crawled underneath while Alice handed me tools like a surgical nurse passing instruments. Removing the fractured part was easier than I expected because a strong, cool wind blew in from the southeast. The breeze was refreshing, even moist. Moist. Uh-oh. I crawled back out and Alice helped me stand. Ted and Carol stood a little distance away, talking quietly. I looked up at the increasingly overcast sky. Alice followed my gaze and gulped. Is that what it looks like?" Alice asked. She had realized the same thing I had. "The monsoon is blowing in really early, isn't it?" A raindrop hit my forehead. Another landed on her glasses, which she wiped off absent-mindedly. More rain began to soak the girls' braless shirts. "I think I should get to work." Cleaning and brazing. The parts didn't take long. The joined piece hissed as it cooled under the scattered raindrops. I placed a damp cactus scrap over the hot part to protect it from the increasing rain. "Hey, folks!" I called to Ted and Carol. "Conference time is over. We need to get out of this wash right now." They looked at me, puzzled. I nodded toward the storm clouds gathering above the peaks. "This is prime flash flood territory. Ted, get your chains." "Let's see," I said, scanning the area and pointing to a hill about 100 yards away. "We'll be safe up there. But we need to move." It was a bit tricky. We chained the vehicles together and anchored a cable from the Sequoia's front winch to a sturdy old ironwood tree halfway up the slope. Four-wheel drive and the winch were enough to pull the Land Cruiser out of the wash and almost to the anchor tree. And just in time. We heard a thunderous noise reminiscent of jets flying overhead last night, only much closer and louder. The ground trembled. Piles of rocks clattered. Then chaos erupted beneath us. A furious flash flood churned and foamed. Muddy waves swept along boulders, uprooted vegetation, tree stumps, and even an antelope. If it had been 90 seconds later, we might have been swept away in that whirlwind too. I glanced at Carol in the passenger seat. Her normally tan complexion had turned nearly pale white. "Oh shit," she murmured. "That was too close, wasn't it?" She shuddered. Reaching out to her, I said, "Way too close. But we're safe now, at least from the flood. We'll figure this out. Don't worry." I comfortingly stroked her thigh. Personally, I wasn't too concerned. The VHF radio crackled. I pressed the button. "How's it looking over there, buddy?" Ted's voice sounded upbeat but strained. "So far, so good. And thank you for the tow. We should move to higher ground so I can fix this thing. There's a sturdy pinyon pine up ahead where we can anchor." We were hoisted and steadied a few minutes later. The storm cell passed beyond the peaks. The wind and rain ceased completely. The overcast sky thinned, allowing patchy sunshine to break through. We stood together in the sudden tranquility. "Well, that was quite the adventure," Alice remarked. "What's our next move?" "We're stuck here for at least an hour," I replied. "That should be enough time to ensure we won't get flooded again and for the sand to firm up so we can drive out." "Carol and I had an idea before we came up here," Ted said. "Your makeshift U-joint might hold up or it might not. This wash leads directly to the Red Cloud Mine Trail, right? We thought we could drive to the parts shop in Desert Center and pick up a new one. They're only a few bucks, right? And if we're going to do that, it better be today. Tomorrow is a holiday, and most places will be closed." I thought about it. "Yeah, that sounds reasonable. But maybe you should take Alice instead." "Why does Carol have to go with you?" "Because it was my idea. And besides, I haven't driven in the Sequoia yet," my wife insisted firmly. Alice glanced at Carol, then at me. "Oh, just let them go." I sensed she might be irritated by their mundane business and entertainment talk. Reluctantly, I agreed, feeling outnumbered. "All right, let me find the part number. Get an OEM part, not one from China, and keep the VHF on, just in case." We set up a tarp shelter on the roof rack of the Land Cruiser and unfolded a table and chairs. We would be comfortable while waiting. I walked down to the wash and tested the packed sand. It seemed solid enough since the water had stopped flowing an hour earlier. Climbing back up, Alice and I exchanged hugs and kisses with our partners before they drove off. "You know what that's really about, right?" Alice turned to me. "No, tell me," I said, genuinely clueless. "They want some alone time to hook up." I must have looked completely dumbfounded with my mouth hanging open in a classic double take. "Cheating on us? My Carol? Your Ted?" I shook my head in disbelief. That's what this weekend is all about. They planned it. Not the fallout, of course, but they knew they'd find a reason to get away together, to be alone, Alice said with a mix of sadness and certainty. "What makes you think they planned anything?" "Ted's not great with email security or passwords. He sends things to the trash and empties it, defrags even, but he skips the disk scrubs, so everything's recoverable." Alice wasn't just good with circuits. She was a guru with DOS, Windows, and Nix. She knew her stuff, and she knew security and encryption. A few things Ted did and said made me suspicious. Cracking his laptop was easy. I bet Carol's Vio has traces too. Want to check? My stomach churned. Did I really want proof that my lifelong love was cheating? Did I want to face the betrayal? Not really, but I guess we should. Let's see if she left it in the car. Carol had her purse, but not her laptop bag. I powered it on. Alice took the lead, effortlessly navigating. What's her usual password? I think she uses her birth date, 20-1065. All right, let's try. Yes, into her email. Nothing suspicious there. Let me recover her emails from the last few weeks. Tip-tap, tip-tap, Many to and from Teddy, but they're encrypted with a different password. Alice attempted a few password-cracking methods. Maybe today is my birthday? I suggested. Wait, I have an idea. She turned around quickly and then applauded softly. Got it. You know what? She gave Teddy's date of birth. She scanned the decrypted messages on the screen. Here they are. Glowing liquid crystal symbols. Conspiracies, plans, love notes. It looked like they were deliberately seducing each other. And they had an affair for at least a few weeks. There were also references to the project, which could lead to some legal problems. But none of the emails contained any details about the project. What kind of material is this about the project? Alice muttered, almost to herself. Let me listen to the tree of folders, my documents. Tip-top, tip-top. No, there's nothing there, at least nothing obvious. Where else could this material be? She opened the file manager window. Oh yes, a memory card. I wonder what's on it. A little more input and another. Aha! Now the password from Teddy is back, and yes. And then, damn it. I crowded next to Alice, our heads nearly bumping as we read together. Plans to defraud Ted's customers and Carol's clients. Plans to drain their accounts into offshore banks. Plans for them to follow the money out of the USA. Plans to abandon their families. Alice shook her head. I knew Teddy had some schemes, but I never imagined anything like this. I never found any of this on his laptop. I bet they both keep their sensitive stuff on memory sticks, nothing on their servers or local hard drives. If Carol hadn't pulled the stick, we'd never have known. She looked at me. As long as they kept their computers offline, when they had memory sticks inserted and removed the sticks before reconnecting, no search would ever find this data. The ultimate high-security data transfer is just to hand someone a stick. Paranoia began to creep in. They can't think they can get away with this so easily. No way. They must have some plan to shift the blame. What's their backdoor, their scapegoat? Who's going to take the fall? Are we in danger? Alice's eyes locked onto mine. You think they'll try to burn us? Wouldn't you? I asked. Yes. Paranoia runs deep. She turned back to the keyboard. I'll check the later files. Here we are. Tip-tap, tip-tap. Damn, it's a setup. She pointed at the screen. They'll funnel all the stolen money through our personal accounts and then fake their disappearance, leaving evidence that we ran the scams and killed our innocent spouses when they got suspicious. They go to Rio. We go to prison. Lovely. My head spun. This was more complicated than rocket science. It was worse. Do you want to know what I was thinking and feeling at that moment? A swirl of chaotic thoughts in my mind. A storm of emotions surging through me. A deafening, this cannot be happening, echoing in the empty halls of my hopes. My stomach churned almost to the point of nausea, confusion, pain. I looked at Alice. Like you asked earlier, what now? Well, I think our happy married lives are over, kaput. What can we do? Take this to the cops? If Ted and Carol are caught, they'll spend every penny we have on lawyers. We'll be broke and our kids... I don't know. I don't have family around here like you guys, no support system. She looked the saddest I had ever seen her. I touched her chin. We're engineers. Let's structure the problem and explore the possibilities, all right? She nodded, and I continued. Here's what we know. Our partners are lost to us. They plan to royally screw us over. Regardless of anything else, we're getting divorced. What other options do we have? We could turn them in. But as you said, they'd destroy us. We could confront them about their schemes and kick them out. But then they'd fight for child custody, property division, and more, ultimately breaking us anyway. Can we shut down their businesses and break them instead? Could we... I left the thought unfinished, but Alice read my expression. No, not rough treatment, no physical attacks, that's not even a last resort. I sighed. I could never physically hurt Carol, no matter what she planned or did. I loved her too much. I saw similar emotions reflected in Alice's face. I sighed again. But the image stayed in my mind like a dark film strip. Alice and I waiting on a slope. The sequoia climbing back up the wash. We push a pile of rocks. It rolls down, crushing the vehicle and our cheating partners. Such a tragedy. But no, we can't do that. I tried to think logically again. Okay, what are our immediate options? Do we blow the whistle on them now or wait until we're back home? Do we try to send a message, maybe to Lunadine, something that will protect us and show we know what's happening? I felt like I was grasping at straws. Alice brightened. That's a start. Can we find a cell tower? We can call our office phones. Since it's a holiday weekend, they'll go straight to voicemail. We can leave messages about what we've discovered. That way, if something happens to us, there'll be a record. And if there are any busts, we'll have this documented. Plus, I have extra memory sticks. I'll copy everything so we have even more evidence. Good ideas, I said. But we still need to get out of here safely. So we should act normal when they return. Everything stays as usual for now. But yes, let's make those preemptive calls. You start copying all the emails and notes. I'll try to find a good signal path. I checked the topo map. I had a good idea of our location, and it showed a straight line to a cell tower from a nearby notch, just a couple 100 feet above us. I see a good prospect, I called to Alice as I scrambled up the slope. I held my Nokia phone like a water diviner's rod, searching for signal. No bars. I climbed higher. Still no bars. I reached the notch. Nothing. Maybe up one side of the notch, I thought. I climbed a rock pile. The stack of granite boulders rose about 25 feet above the slope. Many of the boulders were 10 feet across, with prickly pear cacti sprouting from some crevices. I carefully climbed to the top and pulled my phone from my pocket. 1 bar. I have signal, I shouted. Then I let out a wordless yell. As I turned, the rock pile shifted. It moved. The big stack of huge rocks I had just climbed started to go elsewhere, downwards, and I was going with them. It's an eerie feeling. Everything goes silent. You feel on top of the world. Then the world disappears, and you're falling. And the world is falling with you. Not tiny bits, huge chunks, most much larger than you, all ready to crush you into strawberry pulp. I danced down that rock pile with boulders as my partners. Ouch. I expected to hear nothing, just oblivion. But that didn't happen. When sound returned, I heard the crashing around me. I didn't hear my ankle snap, but I did hear myself mutter, "Oh, shit." Do you believe in miracles? I didn't, not really. But after that moment, I did. I was alive, awake, unbruised, lying on a rough, sandy hill and totally undamaged except for a broken ankle. A miracle. Alice ran up the slope to where I lay. "Bobby, oh, Bobby," she sobbed. She threw herself down next to me. "Bobby, please be alive. Please, don't be dead. Oh, Bobby, Bobby." I shifted my gaze from the nearest peak to her tear-stained face. "I'm not dead, Alice. I'm not even badly hurt. But my ankle is broken. That's all, I think. Calm down, Alice." Alice clung to me, lying in the damp sand, pressing against me, kissing my face and sobbing. "Oh my God, Bobby. I heard that rumble and saw you falling with all those huge rocks. I was sure you were dead. You're my best friend, Bobby. I can't lose you. Oh God, Bobby." Alice pulled herself together and sat down. She stood up and brushed the sand off her denim shorts and an unbuttoned t-shirt, which she put on over a soaked t-shirt. And you could even see interesting places under it. "You can't stay here. I'll get you down to the Land Cruiser. Maybe. Yes. If you can stand on 1 foot, I'll support you." We slowly made our way down the slope to the car, with me hopping on my good foot and my arm around Alice's shoulders, step by stumbling step. We had a couple of close calls when I almost fell into patches of prickly pear cactus. I eased into a folding chair. Alice lifted my feet onto another chair so my legs were elevated as I leaned back. It was almost a restful position. You can't stay there either. I'll set up camp and get you into a tent. You need to lie down out of the sun and weather until they get back. Alice busied herself with the equipment and soon had me inside, sheltered, with my feet elevated on air pillows. My head was positioned at the tent entrance and she sat on the ground next to me. You're in luck. Besides not being smashed to bits, I mean. I still remember enough first aid from my Girl Scout days. Your feet are raised, you're not in shock, your skin isn't clammy, and your pupils aren't constricted. Just pain. She rummaged through a medical bag. All right, here are some painkillers. Better not wash them down with tequila. I swallowed the pills, followed by some Gatorade. Now we just have to wait. Teddy was a medic in the Army. He'll know what to do with you. Remember, we play dumb. Don't let them get suspicious. We waited, talked, plotted, and waited. Sunday afternoon. The sun had passed its peak, making it feel unmistakably like summer. Ted and Carol had been gone for 5 hours. I could understand an hour each way to and from Desert Center, but 3 extra hours. I wondered what excuses they'd come up with. We occasionally heard crackling on the VHF, but never a clear signal. Alice tried calling on several channels, but got no response. The Rocky Canyons effectively blocked radio waves. It felt like we were in an electronic dead zone with no EMF in or out. Finally, we heard the rumble of an engine. The Sequoia climbed up the wash, then the slope, and parked near the Land Cruiser. Ted and Carol emerged, looking smudged and unkempt. Hey guys, sorry it took so long. We had to drag some tree trunks and debris off the trails. The winch helped, but we still had to do a lot of manual work, Ted explained. Ah, so that was the excuse. Hey, Bobby, my lovely wife asked. Why are you in the tent? Are you okay? I had a little accident, I replied. Fell off a rock pile. Just clumsy of me. I know my ankle is broken. I think that's all. Carol looked shocked and ran to the tent, kneeling beside me. Oh God, Bobby, are you okay? She held my head while asking the obvious. If I were okay, I wouldn't be lying here, I thought silently. I've had better days, but I think I'm still fairly good. I smiled faintly. Ted switched into military medic mode and knelt beside me. Broken, huh? Let me take a look at you. Alice, could you grab my aid kit from the back? Yes, that's right. Carol, you'll need to let go of his head. He examined my pupils, felt my skin, skull, and neck, and checked my pulse and blood pressure. Your vitals look good. He crawled into the tent with me and gently prodded my leg. Does this hurt? How about this? Ouch! All right, that definitely hurts. It's broken for sure. I can apply a quick fix. He took an air splint from his kit, wrapped it around my swollen ankle, and inflated it. Are you on painkillers? I grunted a yes. That's all I can do for now. I can give you a dose of Demerol if the pain is too much. Nothing looks life-threatening, but you need to get x-rays soon. I also want to make sure you don't go into shock. The question is, Carol said to Ted, what do we do now? Try to tow us out? Or just drive Bob to a doctor, or what? I interrupted. Look, I can't walk, but I can crawl, and the rest of me is still functional. You can slide me under the Land Cruiser and I can bolt in the new U-joint. Then, I don't know, we can arrange stuff in the back so I can lay down with my foot raised and stabilized. Alice, you're a good driver. Better than Carol in the backcountry, right? Carol nodded. I'll admit it, I'm no good on rough roads. All right then, Ted said. Alice and I will drive. Now let's get the Land Cruiser fixed and ready. The sooner we get you out of here, the better. Scattered raindrops began to fall around us. Yes, sooner is definitely better than later. The three of them helped me slip under the chassis. I quickly replaced the U-shaped hinge. I was stunned when Carol told Ted and Alice to take a little walk, and then climbed in next to me and hugged me from the intact side. Wow. Oh, Bobby, are you all right? Really? No games? Her distress was obvious from her voice and expression. Was this woman really planning to betray me, as I suspected from her notes and emails? I knew she could play and manipulate convincingly. Was that another pretense? And yet it was truly sincere. As I said, I've had better days. I must admit I was worried when those rocks moved under me. Oh, Bobby, I couldn't stand the thought of losing you. I just couldn't. Carol went down my body. She looked up at me. I would do anything for you. Anything. She did what she obviously did with Ted, judging by their emails. Carol looked at me, her eyes flickering with a golden light I'd never seen before, like a fire in a fireplace. I want you to relax before you leave here. I can't bear to see you in pain. She was a great actress, deserving of an Oscar. The rain was pouring down in buckets as they carefully pulled me out from under the car and put me inside. The passenger seat was tilted forward and part of the backrest was cleared and covered with unfolded sleeping bags. I was lying on my back, head first, with my legs raised on a bag full of pillows. Ted put a splint on my leg to keep it stationary and prevent further injury. Is everything ready? Carol's voice came over the VHF radio. I turned on the microphone. Looks like we're ready. Okay, let's move on. Ted took the lead, with Alice trailing about 20 yards behind, more on steeper slopes. The rain had intensified into a dense, dark downpour. I can't even see the sequoia. This situation sucks big time, Alice exclaimed. I could only discern the relentless sky, unable to make out the surrounding terrain. But I silently agreed. I pressed the radio mic again. Can you see anything up there? How's the trail looking? Carol's voice crackled through the airwaves. We're just ahead, around the bend. I think we're approaching a sidewash and... The radio abruptly cut off. I heard a loud roar, followed by a crash and more roaring. Stop! I shouted. Alice slowed from a crawl to a halt. I pressed the mic urgently. Carol, are you there? Carol, please respond. Silence. Alice slammed on the parking brake and leaped out of the vehicle. She returned in seconds, looking frantic. Hold on, she yelled. I gripped the seat back tightly as Alice reversed the 404, maneuvering onto a steep, rocky slab tilted at about 30 degrees. What? I began to ask, but my voice was drowned out by more roaring from behind us. Alice sat in the car, tears streaming down her face, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. She glanced up at the rearview mirror, then slumped forward, continuing to sob uncontrollably. They're gone, she cried out. The water. The flash flood. Everything down there is wiped clean. They're gone. Her body shook with grief. What am I going to tell the kids? Gone? Ted and Carol gone? Oh no. Our kids. Carol's parents are nearby, mine are gone, and Ted and Carol had employees. Wait, why am I saying had? Why past tense? Do I assume they're dead? Alice, how sure are you? Try the VHF again. Maybe they found a safe place. Please try, she pleaded desperately, searching for a glimmer of hope. I keyed the radio repeatedly. Silence greeted us each time. The storm passed, the rain ceased, and the sky cleared. That was all I could see lying there. Stay here. Don't move, Alice instructed unnecessarily as she locked the parking brake and stepped out into the chilly air, leaving the car door ajar. The key in the ignition beeped incessantly during her absence. The path below looks clear, she reported upon returning. I'll try to get us down. I'll stop at every safe spot and search for the sequoia. You keep trying the radio. Did you see any sign of them? I asked. She shook her head sadly. Alice guided us down the mountain slowly. We saw and heard nothing from our friends. She led us to our first night's campsite where we had a clear view of a cell tower. Alice took out her Nokia and dialed 911. When the police arrive, we shouldn't mention anything about Ted and Carol, okay? Alice sounded anxious. Right. Maybe you should delete Carol's Vio trash bin if there's time and hide the memory sticks. We don't want all of us under investigation for the next few years, I replied. That's exactly what I was thinking. The plans for fraud and theft were just plans. They hadn't happened yet. No need to get the authorities overly interested, Alice agreed. The sun was setting when the first helicopter carrying rangers from Joshua Tree National Park to the north arrived. A U.S. Navy medevac helicopter from the Salton Sea Base landed shortly after. Medics checked me quickly, noting I was alive but in shock and hypothermic, with some irregular heartbeat. They rushed me to Eisenhower Medical Center in Palm Springs. Despite Alice's protests, she stayed behind to coordinate with the Rangers, Sheriff, and Highway Patrol helicopters that arrived soon after. At that moment, I couldn't tell who felt worse, her or me. It was without a doubt the worst Sunday I could recall. On Sunday evening, I gazed out my hospital ward window as twilight slowly faded. I was under observation through the night. They called it overnight observation. The concern wasn't so much my reaction to the fracture, but rather the risk of exposure and hypothermia from being outside, and also my heart. My mother had atrial fibrillation, so perhaps it's genetic. Cell phone usage was prohibited inside the hospital. I anxiously awaited any news from Alice, sweating with worry. The outside world grew darker, mirroring my mood. Guilt flooded my thoughts. I had imagined their deaths, picturing scenarios like a rock slide. But reality turned out far worse. Even though I bore no responsibility and was not involved. Guilt mingled with pain, loss, loneliness, and emptiness. The world I knew had ended. Goodbye. What might I have done and faced if things hadn't ended this way? And Alice. Would it have led to divorce, legal battles, depression? If Carol hadn't cheated with Ted, if they hadn't conspired, if Alice hadn't discovered their affair, and if we hadn't uncovered their criminal plans, if I hadn't stumbled on that rock pile, so we hadn't attempted to flee during the storm, if we had escaped unscathed, but their conspiracy remained hidden, if they had been apprehended with or without our involvement, if they were still alive, if. Around 10 o'clock in the hospital corridor, I overheard a heated argument. Suddenly, the ward door burst open, and Alice forcefully passed by two petite Filipina nurses. If you want to call security, go ahead, but you'll need a few big, strong guys to drag me out, because that's what it'll take, she declared defiantly. Spotting me, she rushed over. "Oh God, Bobby, oh God!" She enveloped me in her sweaty embrace and pressed her tear-streaked face against mine. "Oh, Bobby." After a moment, she released me and stood back, our fingers intertwined. "Any news?" I asked quietly. She nodded sadly. They didn't need a major search. The CHP helicopter spotted them on their way in. They found what remains of the Sequoia about a mile and a half away from where we were, down a sidewash. The car was completely destroyed. And Ted and Carol... Her grip tightened painfully on my hand. "They're really gone, Bobby." She began to cry, leaning into me. I wrapped my arms around her shoulders and we held each other tightly, shaking with grief. An authoritative nurse, likely the ward supervisor, along with two security guards, entered and confronted Alice. "Look, visiting hours are flexible in situations like this, but you can't treat my nurses that way. Ms. Olson, you have 5 more minutes. Then my team will escort you out. Don't waste your time." With that, the nurse left, leaving the guards behind. "I've contacted everyone," Alice said. "Carol's parents will bring all the children here tomorrow. They wanted to charter a plane and fly out tonight, but I refused. My dad, Ted's mom, and your sister will meet us at home late tomorrow. What are you up to tonight? Not keeping vigil, I hope. Ha ha. You're not sick enough for that. No, I booked a room at a motel down the street. I really need some sleep. But I'll be back here first thing in the morning and we'll sort everything out. She leaned down and gave me a gentle kiss, just a light touch of lips. I've been thinking about the future, I said, squeezing her hand. We're great friends, Alice. We're not soulmates. We're not a romantic couple. She nodded and squeezed back. And I really want us to remain friends no matter what. Yes, I want to stay friends too, but maybe with benefits? Her smile was hesitant. I nodded and smiled in return. We could get there. You know that's not where the story ends. Afterward, we had many tearful discussions with our families. Our children recovered more quickly than our older relatives. Life continued. The Riverside County Medical Examiner determined the deaths of Theodore Olson and Carolina Ortega to be accidental. Only Alice and I knew about their betrayal and conspiracy. We laid them to rest at Forest Lawn and hid the memory sticks, just in case. Ted and Carol had substantial insurance. The payouts cleared our mortgages and provided ample college funds for our 4 daughters. Alice and I still work, but we're not in dire straits. Some of our projects have reached Mars, others venture toward the outer solar system. We've been proud of our accomplishments. Ted and Carol's businesses were taken over by their deputies and are thriving without their original leaders. Alice and I are partial owners, and the income is comfortable. We eventually acknowledged we were more than just friends with benefits. The Ortegas moved next door into the Olson house, complete with its swimming pool, and I moved into Alice's room. A bit of furniture shifting was all it took. Our friends with benefits arrangement lasted only a few months. We tied the knot on Halloween in a charmingly eerie Gothic hall near the Southwest Museum. The ceremony was a formal masquerade, rich with vibrant costumes. Alice and I usually avoid discussing hypothetical scenarios, but sometimes this topic comes up in our conversations. We were lying in bed together, cooling off after making love. Alice snuggled against my neck. "Hi, best friend. What now?" She wrinkled her nose. "Well, next time you can play a dancer and I'll be a donkey. How about this?" "Really, is it that again?" "Well, okay, if you insist. Or maybe we could try the dwarf and the hyena." "Sure, why not?" I was silent for a moment. "You know, it's weird." "Yes. I know, it's strange that we're here. We could never have expected. We could not have imagined that everything would turn out this way. To be honest, I never planned for us to be together." "I know. You've always been a perfect gentleman, and I've always been a hard-working mother, and we've lived our own lives. Do you think maybe they thought we were, and maybe that's why they ended up where they are? I loved my Caroline so much, and I still do. And I never thought about going anywhere without Ted, but they went the other way. A small map, incorrect instructions. But how did they end up on this page?" I shook my head. "And what happened? Was it divine justice?" Alice silenced me gently. "You understand. It was just carelessness. No magical payback, no karma or fate. Sloppy actions attract bad luck. They were sloppy. That's all." My pragmatic engineer's mind accepted her explanation. But my traditional Californian upbringing, steeped in missions, caballeros, and curanderos, wasn't so easily convinced. I must mention prickly pear cacti, also known as Indian figs, Opuntia ficus indica. These grow in dense, thorny clusters and boast vibrant flowers. The flower color varies by type and location: green, yellow, orange, or red. Local varieties only bloom under the brightest sun. These summer blossoms seem to radiate like neon lights. They gleam much like Carol's eyes did the last time I lost myself in her gaze. I'll never forget that moment.